Hello and welcome, one and all. I am CD, also known as the Dark One, and we are here with Spy Classrooms. If you haven't noticed, spies are pretty big right now, with at least two major Shonen Jump series centered around the subject matter, and one of them getting the anime that blew up this year. So yeah, spies are big, and while I can't say that's the reason this series exists, or why it's getting its own upcoming anime, I can say it did help influence the production committee somewhere in some boardroom in Japan somewhere. But how is Spy Classroom? Is it actually good? And does its anime have a chance of being good? Well, that's what we're here to find out. But instead of going over a single volume, I'm going to take a more broad look at what I've read, which is volumes 1 and 2 of the original light novel series. I know there is a manga out there, but I haven't read it as I've only stuck to the light novels. And I'm going to be using their English names because I know their Japanese names, and I'm sticking to the English ones. Apparently they're placed around flowers or something. Not sure. I know at least one character's flower name. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the plot. As you can expect from a spy series, the series takes place in the middle of fantasy Cold War, and not Europe, with spies all over the place. There's a hidden shadow war going on, and behind the scenes of this so-called peace, there are spies trying to infiltrate and influence everywhere in various different forces between the two governments of an East and West, not Europe situation. So, yeah, same exact situation as Spy Family in a way, but more anime-y, if that makes any sense. Anyway, this leads to spy academies popping up all over the place because, of course, who's going to train the next generation of spies? Among these various spy schools is a young girl named Lily, who's on the verge of being kicked out. Why? Well, she's rather good at her practical exams. She's rather good at her written exams, but her practical exams are rather lacking, with almost no skills to speak of, but on the verge of being kicked out and not having much of a choice, she's given an invitation to join a new team, Lamplight, and take on an impossible mission, a nearly suicidal job, and is joined by several other girls and given a rather odd teacher to help them train for this rather impossible, nearly suicidal mission. This man is Klaus, and as he reveals, this group is combined of various girls that basically are almost all dropouts from across the various spy schools across the nation to take on this impossible mission and keep their country safe, while proving to others that they do have what it takes to be actual spies. Now that's just Volume 1's premise. Basically speaking, from here on, the various volumes are each of the various impossible missions or nearly suicidal missions the gang or girls to take on. And Volume 2, which I've read, has the group trying to face an impossible assassin. Basically, they're trying to stop an infamous assassin from assassinating someone rather well off. It's, that kind of deal. Anyway, that's the basic premise. The idea of a group of washouts having to take on the most difficult of jobs is a basic idea, but it's tied and true and it does work. We all love an underdog story, and what's better underdog than someone who's basically on the verge of dropping out, having no choice but to get their shit together. And it also helps with our main characters, essentially Klaus, who's the main leader of the group. The dude is an oddball, to say the least. He's a master spy and the self-proclaimed world's greatest spy. But he's also said to teach these girls, but he's a very bad teacher. So yeah, Klaus is basically a savant of spy work. He does spy work, but doesn't exactly know how to explain how he does what he does, and as such, is a terrible teacher. Essentially, he just tells the girls to do one thing as their one assignment, and that is to beat him. Yes, so we have the girls trying various different plans and methods to try to get the one up on their sensei here, only for him to countermand them one way or another. This gives me very strong assassination classroom vibes, with Klaus serving as an insurmountable wall the girls have to overcome, while also improving their individual skills and group skills along the way to beat him and overcome the challenges that he gives them. Which, honestly speaking, It's pretty cool. I kind of like this little trope of a sensei being like, hey, beat my ass, and then you're the master now. And then just being, like, almost unkillable in terms of their level of skill. Like, I think Kuro Sensei from Assassination Classroom was the best example I've seen of this, but I have seen it a few times in mostly martial arts works, and this one here does a really good job of it too. So yeah, I do like this idea as a trope. Now let's move on to these so-called impossible missions. This is a term for various missions that people have already failed, but still need to be completed for obvious reasons. So they're basically big challenges. And hell, there's even a saying in the schools to not take on these challenges because of how impossible they are. Most of these, as an example, will probably be breaking into a heavily guarded enemy facility, or, as I stated earlier, taking out a master assassin. These missions serve as great ever-present threats that go on for the volume, and we see our girls overcome them using the skills they pick up and are practiced and learned throughout the course of the story or volume. What's interesting is the fact that each of the girls basically fails one way or another from their various schools. We get to see why they're dropouts, but also see why they have the skills to actually be master spies, such as Lily essentially being bad at practical stuff, but having the know-how and knowledge to get through when she needs to. It's just one of those really cool things that I kind of love seeing, where it's like, oh, you failed in the school system, but when we get you in the actual field, you're actually a pretty strong badass. Yeah, I just kind of like this trope, and also I like digs at the educational system in general. As I stated, Klaus is an oddball, and that makes him stand out as one of the best characters in the story. Unfortunately, outside of Lily and another character who I'm not going to get into because major spoilers in Volume 2, the girls are kind of homogenous at the moment. I haven't read Volume 3 yet, but this is kind of, the thing that happens when you introduce a group of characters all at once, like in a classroom setting. Like, as fleshed out and individualized as the characters in Assassination Classroom are, when you get to the end of the story, at the beginning of the story, you only recognize blue hair and green hair. And it's very much the same thing here, but without the colors. In this case, you really only recognize Lily, especially in Volume 1, because she's the main character of Volume 1, and the de facto leader of the group. And then Volume 2 gives us another main focus. Now, it appears that from here on, each of the volumes will be giving us one of the girls to focus on as the main focus for their little arc and flesh them out to help them stand out from the group. Now, we do have many plot lines in each of the volumes to help not dehomogenize them and make them stand out a bit more as individuals, but that seems to be the way it's working. Although I do imagine we'll be given some more character focus and individual points in later books as the story goes on and more of the group is fleshed out. If that makes any sense, as I stated, basically I'm saying they'll be given mini arcs in the book, even though the book will be focused on one major character. If that makes any sense. I'm trying to, it makes sense in my head, but I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else listening to this if you've watched this to this point. Anyway, that's probably my main complaint, is the fact that obviously all the girls feel like a homogenous group, which you really can't help because of the way you're introducing them all at once. That's just what happens when you introduce a large cast all at once. You kind of end up with the group feeling a bit homogenous until you get time to flesh them out as individual characters, which I do hope the later volumes appear to be doing this, which is a good thing. I am happy to get some more names to faces, or names to names in this case. Yeah. So overall, I have to admit, the overall story is basic but decent and works for what it is. I do like the premise of these impossible do-or-die missions and this group of washouts having to actually pull off something that even supposed masters couldn't do, while Klaus is around to actually help them as kind of almost safety net, although not really, because while he does work to help the girls and complete the missions, he's often off accomplishing his own missions, and the girls are left to vie for themselves to prove their own worth and skill. I am curious as to see what will happen in Volume 3, so I'll be picking that one up, and I'm also curious about the anime. I don't know the ETA on it. I do know it is in production, but that's all I know so far. I have to say, if you want an Assassination Classroom-esque vibe, then maybe go for this one. Although, like Assassination Classroom, as I stated, it probably won't be getting to the real good bits until much later on. And yeah, if you want yourself a really pretty short but enjoyable read, I recommend this one. So yeah, recommended. As I said, I'm terrible at ending these things. I will see you all next time, everybody.